Noah May, how are you, buddy?
I am doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I appreciate you coming on. You had me on your podcast, and now I'm able to interview you on mine, which I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
I 100% agree. I'm ready to dive on in and chat with you. As you had said, yeah, I had Rich on my podcast. Loved our interview and our time, and I'm excited to get into kind of you knowing a little bit more about me. So I
Yeah.
am 100% ready for our conversation today.
All right. Good deal. Let me give the audience a brief introduction here for you so they get a feel for who you are before we dive in. You're a journalism graduate. You earned your bachelor's degree in journalism from Auburn University in December of 2024. You're a multi-show podcast host with three podcasts: Lethal Venom, which is a comedy and tough topics podcast; Music Talks, which is a deep dive into songs and albums; and Southern Reads, a book club podcast. You're an authentic storyteller using your lived experiences as a self described outcast and mental health warrior to create an open, honest voice for others facing similar challenges while sharing their stories. And as a survivor and a mental health advocate, you started experiencing depression starting around age 13 and anxiety around 18. And you've also had suicidal ideation, which you've shared. You have turned your personal struggles into a platform for mental health awareness, which is very near and dear to my heart, as you well know from our discussion on lethal venom. So, one of the easiest things and places for us to start would be with my only structured question that I ever have on these episodes is where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Noah?
Well, I was born in a kind of a small town in Northeast Alabama. I was Alabama born and raised. I kind of still live in the same farm town as I grew up in. I recently had to move back due to financial reasons, but childhood for me growing up was kind of your typical childhood dream of growing up in the 2000s, early 2010s. I lived out kind of in the country. We lived on the lake as well. I had a trampoline growing up and a pool, and during the summertime, I would just always be outside. I would always be inside also. I watched a lot of my cartoons on Nickelodeon and Disney all the time. And I was a huge animal lover too. My grandmother and I used to all the time buy every kind of animal book that we could find, and we would look at them thousands of times over and over again. And I kind of had just the typical normal childhood, even though the my childhood was not the typical family household like what you would see in the modern normal family. My parents did a really good job of trying to keep my childhood very much normal and not different than what most people would probably see on the outside. They kept it very cool. They kept it calm, and I had a really good childhood growing up. It was just
Okay.
happy, and until about when I did have my mental health start acting up, childhood for me was really nice. I was the quiet kid. I had a difficult time trying to make friends as well, so I always tended to just chill and hang out with myself. I always would talk to myself a lot, and it was just kind of like what a lot of shy kids do. But
Yeah.
as the years went on, I kind of broke out of that shy spell and was able to kind of make some friends. But yeah, that's kind of childhood in a nutshell. It was pretty good despite some of the circumstances we were in.
Okay. What type of work did your parents do when you were little?
Let's see. My mom was, I think, had retired or was on disability at the time, so she didn't work. Uh,
Okay.
Before then, she worked at a hospital. She was a nurse. Kind of worked at the nurse's desk, and by the time I was born, she kind of had stopped working there.
Okay.
My grandfather, he worked at it was kind of like a gas station, but it also had like a restaurant in there. A lot of southern gas stations have that kind of
Yeah.
coexisting like gas station, and there might be like a little restaurant like Subway in there, but it was kind of like it wasn't a chain restaurant. It was more of a particular thing for that gas station. He worked there, and then he retired when I want to say when I started kindergarten, I think he's retired. And my
Hmm.
grandmother was also retired. She was a nurse, but retired long time after I was born or before I
Okay.
was born. So we had some people in the medical background. Um, and then we had one that was kind of in the cooking industry.
Okay. Okay. Was your dad around during your childhood or?
So unfortunately, no, and that's kind of where I was hitting at the atypical family.
Okay.
My father was kind of a rapist and was a sexual assault abuser. He uh
Mm.
s- sexually abused my mom growing up. And well, story with that was she lived on her own at the time. She was 20 or 21. This was back in this happened in 2001. She was
Okay.
living on her by herself. A man that she had not known prior to that had broke in, and I guess he originally thought it was just going to be a regular break in, but I guess when he saw that a woman was living there by herself, he took it upon himself to sexually assault her. So
Mm.
he was he was never convicted. That he never was found after that incident. He left the premises right immediately after it happened, and by the time the police got out there, they couldn't find him. They did, from my knowledge, a little bit of investigating, but they came up with nothing really. So he's kind of a mystery to this day.
Okay.
My mom has not really said who he was. Said that she didn't know who it was. So she never got a name or anything. So he's kind of a mystery to this day. We don't know whereabouts in the world he is, if he's alive, if he's dead, if he's in jail, if he has a family or anything like that.
Right.
So that's kind of who my dad was. So never met him, just heard that story of him.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, so from that perspective, were your grandparents more into your family life in terms of support system, helping your mom out and being with you?
Yeah, my after the incident had happened, my mom had actually moved back in with her parents, which were my grandparents at the time.
Yeah.
She had moved back in with them, and we just lived with them. They were huge support systems. My mom was also a huge support system. I mean, everyone in the family was supportive of me and everything. So they were double down on support, and what is it was just a really good childhood growing up, being in like a good supportive home, loving home that most
Yeah.
kids, some kids don't have that luxury and have that blessing. But
Right.
luckily I was able to, even though that most people would say that my growing up was kind of atypical. Despite that, it was a really good childhood growing up that I had.
Did you have very many cousins and stuff around you as a kid at all that you were able to connect with?
Yeah, I actually had I'm an only child, so I don't have any immediate brothers or sisters or any kind of siblings, half
Right.
siblings at all. I
Yeah.
have so many cousins though. Our family's so big, and we've had um just family on multiple sides to where it's weird being an only child, but then have about 30 or 40 cousins too. It's just weird, but yeah, but they kind of were it was just a weird dynamic when it came to the cousins because we're not really blood related. So it was just kind of like a weird balance between like mixture. But I mean, they were always like nice to me and everything, and I always got along with them when I did see them. So I don't talk to them a lot, but when I do see them, we have friendly interactions with one another.
Right, right. So these cousins, would those be your mom's brothers and sisters potentially, or did she have, do you have aunts and uncles from your mom's side?
Uh, let me figure out family tree here for a minute. My mom, I think, was an only child as well, so I don't have any aunts or uncles to my knowledge.
Gotcha.
Um, the cousins stem from,
From your grandparents' extended family?
I think so. I think it stems from my grandparents, and then
All right.
that's how I got a lot of the cousins is from them.
Yeah.
Um, don't take my word for verbatim on that because family tree for me, the furthest I can go is about great grandmother, and after that, I get confused.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they kind of stem from my grandparents or my great grandmother. I think a lot, my great grandmother is kind of tied in to a lot of cousins on one side of the family, and then
Hmm.
on this side, and then on one side, it's my grandparents. My mom didn't really have any brothers or sisters, so I didn't have any aunts or uncles at the time. And of course,
Right.
I didn't have any when it my mom didn't have um any more kids other than myself. So I don't really have an extension of that either. So
Okay.
um I won't necessarily have any aunts or uncles for my kids whenever that happens. So there has been rumors going around though that twins do run in the family, but it's weird. Um,
Okay.
my grandmother didn't have twins. My mom didn't have twins with me, so apparently I'm kind of the next in kin to have twins. I don't
Gotcha.
know how the odds of like, oh yeah, it's 50-50 if it's like a 80% chance I do, 20% chance I don't.
Right.
We don't really have any specifics, but apparently twins run in the family, but they do kind of come very few and far between. So I don't know how persistent that would be going further, how prominent and dominant it'll be. Um,
Sure.
but my mom didn't have a twin, my grandmother didn't have a twin, my I didn't have a twin. I feel like my grandfather didn't have a twin either, so I don't know how it's
So
gonna
it may
play
be an
out.
extra generation back.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's long time ago.
Yeah. Right on. How about elementary school for you? Was it being shy like you were? Was it difficult for you to engage in class? Did you want to sit towards the back of the class, or were you comfortable being maybe in the middle or up towards the front at all?
Well, good the downside of being in elementary school was we couldn't pick our own seats. We were always assigned a seat.
Uh,
So, but the classroom was so small. I mean, it didn't really matter where you sat in the classroom, you could see. Um, but I would say elementary school for me was okay. I enjoyed school at the time. Now that changed, it changes later on, but at the time, they did kind of a mixture of learning and games and fun days and everything. So it was it was pretty much a chill. Um, I didn't really have trouble. I I did get in trouble for like stupid things. I usually talked a lot in class and was never quiet. I sometimes got in trouble for that.
okay.
Our school was weird. They didn't really teach us how to write or anything. They,
Really?
they they made it to where it was kind of a thing where you had to come to school and already know how to write your name and write neatly and everything. They didn't
Oh,
really
wow.
teach us any of that. Um, so that was kind of a thing that I also had difficult with as well was my own handwriting. I
Okay.
basically taught my own self how to write. My handwriting, if you look at like And it's a really good thing. If you even look at my elementary school and even middle school writing compared to now, there's
Uh,
a huge change in how well you can read it. Um, it's gotten, I wouldn't say it's gotten a little worse because I don't write as much anymore. Once
mm.
I got to college, I stopped writing all the time.
Just
Elementary,
you,
middle, and basically from like kindergarten to 12th grade, I wrote every single day. They made us our hands fall off because that's how much writing we did. And then when
yeah,
we got to college, it was just like quit cold turkey. Of like, oh, everything's digital now. We just type
yeah,
it. So my handwriting's kind of a little worse than it had actually gotten. Um, but there's still a huge difference compared to what it used to be. I also got in trouble for this dumb stuff too. I mean, when being with kids that are take everything so sensitive at the time, I always got in trouble for really ridiculous things that you look back, it's like that's what you got in trouble for. It was just kind of those moments. So it was it was always a thing. I also was kind of a picky eater, so I always would carry a lunch, and my lunch was comparably different than um what most kids would think lunch would be.
hmm,
I didn't really eat school cafeteria. I did for about a year or two, but then I mostly carried my own lunch from home all the time, and that was literally, oh, I can't remember now what I used to eat. I think chips and something else. That's probably about it. So
right.
elementary school was an experience. It was just kind of a learning process, but um it was all around a pretty good experience.
Were you able to make friends fairly easy, and have quite a few friends, or were you more close to maybe one or two kids that you would hang around most of the time with? Or were you a loner? Did you just kind of do your own thing?
A little bit of all the above. I tended to be by myself sometimes, and then I would have like I would try to make friends with others and never really worked out as well. But then I had like one or two people that I were really close with. So it was just kind of a mixed bag and it really depended on the day. It just depended on how I felt that day. If I wanted to be by myself, I was. If I wanted to talk with others, I would.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a mixed bag, and of course it changed over the years and changed all the time. But yeah, for the most part, it was just kind of a mixed bag.
Okay. Mhm. I think I mentioned this on when I did your podcast that all my family's from East Tennessee. So I would spend holidays and summertime down there, um, with relatives and uh, family and different things like that. Um, and for me, my grandfather was a Southern Baptist minister. So the weekends were kind of centered around that, so to speak. You know, Saturday night you'd go to somebody's church for singings that they would have, or and then Sunday he would be preaching, morning and night type scenario. Um, was church something that was a part of your upbringing, being from Alabama and knowing that the South is kind of the Bible Belt?
Yeah, church was very much part of my life. I was a Christian, grew up in a Methodist church
Okay.
basically till I was out of high school. So, that was kind of just a typical Southern tradition
Right.
that you did on Sundays was
Yeah.
you would wake up and sometimes go to Sunday school for the kids and then have church, and then Sunday was just always kind of a rest day. We weren't too like strict on a lot of rules growing up though. Some churches is frowned upon if you skip a Sunday. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we would skip Sundays here and there. We weren't like the more strict, oh, we have to go to church every Sunday or if it's a sin. We kind of were
Yeah.
not like that. Um, they were not real strict about the Bible and everything with me. Some things they were, some things they weren't.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just kind of a it was just kind of like a healthier way of going to church all the time growing up. So we didn't go to a church that was real culty like that was like you have to do this and this and you have to
Yeah.
follow by these rules. We had a good church pretty much growing up, and a lot of the kids that were in there, we grew up together. We always would do fun stuff together. So it was overall a good experience. But yeah, church and the Bible was something that was very much a part of our household and part of my childhood growing up.
Okay. Did you play any sports or any extracurricular stuff as a kid in elementary school at all? Like
Well,
t-ball?
I did not get the athletic bone, so that
No.
was not for me. I um a lot of the guys in my grade were tough and rough when they played sports, and I think if they tackled me, that would have been my murder right then. So they would have been charged with murder at a very young age. So sports was not a thing for me. The only sport that I really kind of enjoyed was volleyball, but of course, we didn't have
Okay.
a male's volleyball team. It was always only for the girls.
Gotcha.
So we didn't have a that. I think if we did, that probably would have been the sport that I would have played.
Yeah.
But soccer, baseball, and football, I never really
Right.
got into, so I didn't really ever sign up to play for that. And then didn't really start doing those till about middle school too. So
Okay.
I was like, so it's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Did some of your extracurricular activity in terms of being a only child, was it surrounded mostly around just watching TVs and cartoons or did you like to read or draw or any of that type of stuff?
Uh, I liked reading to an extent at that
Okay.
point. Um, School at that point, about halfway through second grade, was starting to kind of veer me away from reading because they were so strict about it, and that's when they started becoming more like adamant about us reading. So my kind of love for it started dwindling
Fade.
away.
Yeah.
Um, I was a huge gamer. Now, I wasn't the PlayStation gamer. I was more of the I had a Nintendo, like Nintendo DS. I mean, that was like the original, like old school Nintendo. I was that, and then I had a Wii for a very short time. That was very short lived, but I was a huge PC gamer. I loved playing games on our family computer that we would buy from Walmart as like it had to be PC friendly, but be able to play on there. I played with those, and there was a lot of gaming websites too that I found that were appropriate for my age and that I would play on all the time. So
Yeah.
I would spend a lot of time on that, and then so yeah, I had some others, and the TV was part. I don't know why I'm yelling it so much, but I besides that, I was a huge gamer. There were some good childhood games that I played that I look back and I'm like, I really did miss playing that. I really did
Yeah.
miss being able to get on there and play it. So there was so many good games I played.
Yeah. Can you remember one specifically that you were really, really drawn to?
Um, oh, there's so many. I have to pick a good one. Um, there was a game that was from I think it was the company was called PopCap. It was these the game was called Chuzzle, and it basically was like a matching game. It was these basically little fur balls that
Okay.
you would drag, and you had to make like at least three or more for to kind of match them together, and you would get points on it.
Yeah.
That was such an addicting game. It was soothing to play, and then what was there was another game from the same company called Feeding Frenzy. It was basically a fish ocean type game where you kind of were you're a fish that had to eat other fish to kind of survive and grow. That was a very fun game. I was very addicted to that game. Trying to think of other games. I There was a website called Cool Math, and anyone that grows up in the 2000s and early 2010s knows what Cool Math is. But for people that don't, I thought it got debunked, and it wasn't like or defunct or something. I don't know the correct terminology for that, but it basically I thought was gone, where you couldn't even access it anymore. Actually, you can, and so recently I found a lot of the games that I played on there that were
Oh,
really
cool.
fun. So Cool Math was a part of childhood for me. And then what was other games? I remember there was a Hot Wheel game that I played that was kind of confusing to play. That I don't remember how you play. I don't really remember playing it. I just remember watching it. So that was kind of how that was. Um, but yeah, there's so many other games I can think of, but those usually were the top ones I played all the time.
Okay. That's interesting. Your energy completely shifted when you started talking about those games. It was cool to watch that take place. You must have really, really enjoyed them.
Oh, I did. I'm trying to think what my high score on that Chuzzle game was. I know about 2 or 3 million. It was such
Oh,
a high score. And that was such a well thing. But what really made me mad was if we got a new computer, my score would go away. It was
oh
like
man. Yeah,
so that was kind of the unfun part, but it was easy to kind of get back up of how addictive and how much I played it all the time. So
right.
it was a really fun game. I miss it a lot, but
Yeah. Yeah. Did you play outside very much at all? Like around the house or at your grandma and grandpa's? Was nature something that you were drawn to in any way or no? Mostly just the
like
games.
later on, it was more of a mix. When it
Okay.
came summertime, I was outside a lot. I had a swing set.
All right.
So I would always be on that swing, and I swung on that swing about 500 times a day, and I think I wore it out. That's how much I played on it. I wore that thing out. And then when it got warm enough, we had a pool. I always would go swimming in the summertime, and then we lived on the lake, but I couldn't really go down there by myself without my mom or grandparents going down there. So I didn't
Yeah.
go to the lake as much growing up till I was a little older and could actually go down there by myself and have them not worry about me killing myself or like
Right.
hurting myself down there,
Yeah.
like falling on a rock or cutting my knee open. And so getting bit by a snake, it was just like I always had to be on watch duty at that time. But I was outside when it was warm. Cold, I was staying in. I was not a huge fan of the cold unless it snowed.
Hmm.
If it snowed, I would always be outside in the snow playing because it's kind of a rarity here, but has even become more rare over the past few years. But growing up, we always had at least one good snow every year. It was just, it wasn't like we got 8 or 9 inches every year. It was like an inch or two, sometimes more than that. Um, but yeah, outside I did pretty well a mixed bag of it before I got tablets and a phone. That
Okay.
I was more outside, but once those kind of got introduced, my time outside kind of dwindled down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. As with many kids, once you
Yeah.
get the tablets and the phones, then it's a whole different world that you dive into. So, as you're moving closer to junior high, um, middle school scenario, did you still go to the same school or did you have to go to another school to do middle school?
Um, let's see. Well, originally, growing up, it was kind of my elementary school used to be K through fifth grade. That's kind of how I think most elementary schools are.
Yeah.
Um, but when I was in first grade, they actually had opened up a new middle school in town because the old one was really run down. It was really falling in on itself, so they had to
Mhm.
build a new one. Well, when they built the new one, the fifth graders decided to move in with the middle school. So then it kind of turned into kindergarten through fourth grade, and then once you hit fifth grade, you went to the middle school. Um, our county is a little strange when it comes to um the school system and how it's kind of ran here.
Okay.
Um, we have about 5 school districts in our county. They all have kind of their own elementary, middle, and high school. However, out of the 5, 4 of them are combined K through 12. So,
Okay.
um, all of them are have their own. They all have all their grades in one, basically on one campus. The
Hmm.
school that I went to had 3 separate buildings. So they had an elementary building, and then about 10 minutes down the road there'd be a middle school building, and then on the opposite side of town there'd be a high school building. So
Mm.
our elementary, middle, and high school was all kind of in their own
Right. Yeah.
world. They were not all shared on one campus, which was odd because everyone else in the whole county is on that kind of regimen. Hold on one second.
Yep.
And so they kind of had it to where it was all combined. I don't know the reasoning why ours is like that, why they don't combine ours, but they never changed it. And I think it was like that even when my mom went to school there. So this has
Oh
been
wow.
something that's been like a decades thing.
Yeah.
Um, So but that's how it was. So we did have to travel some, but I mean, with it being all in the same town, it was like a 5 minute difference between probably all of them. One was like 2 minutes. So it was fairly it was fairly quick, I would say. But um we all were not in the same on the same campus like most schools probably are.
Gotcha. With having to go to a different building at that point in time, did you also start to see new kids coming in from other areas of the county, or was it kind of still the same kids that you saw in elementary school, but just in a different building?
Um over the years, we had kids move and come back, and we had new students from different parts of the state and even different states come in. But for the most part, our grade kind of stayed consistent. We didn't really have like a huge change. The thing with that is that when you went to the elementary school, you went to that same middle school for the city.
Yeah.
So, for an example, I'll use kind of a bigger city. Say Atlanta had like Atlanta Elementary, Atlanta Middle, and Atlanta High School. And then there might be a district down south that might have the same thing. You
Yeah.
kind of stayed in that same district. So if you went to the elementary school in Atlanta, you typically would stay in the same district of that for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it was at our school too. Um, so I was from a small town called Center, and Center was the only one that had like the 3 separate buildings.
Okay.
So if I went to elementary school, I would go to the middle school. I wouldn't go to any of the other communities in there. I wouldn't go to like a uh another place was like Sandrock. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I went there, but then I'd have to go to Sandrock Middle. We basically stay in the same district or
Gotcha.
same kind of like school system.
Okay.
So my grade and everything was kind of together. We Some kids, of course, would move to different schools over the years, and then they'd come back and then move again. So I did see some new faces. Um, it wasn't really adamant till we got to about middle school once you started seeing um numerous different faces because elementary school for us it's changed now, but when I went there it was you had the same teacher all day, you had the same kids all day. You didn't
Uh,
really you didn't bounce around different classes and like it wasn't like, okay, you go to English first, math second, and everyone had like a different schedule to where they go at different times
yeah.
of the day. Um we had this one teacher that would teach all the classes and we would actually have it to where we had to stay with them. Middle school was kind of like that too. Fifth grade was we started switching classes, but we had the same homeroom. So the same
Hmm.
homeroom would travel with each other every day. And then once we got to sixth grade and onward, it was like that's when we all started getting mixed up. And we had like more of a variety of like some classes you would have the same person two times, and then there might be a class where I only have a class with one student. That's where it kind of started getting more mixed and kind of blended together. But
Right.
originally it was I stayed with the same homeroom all day.
Okay. Did you start to have opportunity in middle school to maybe look at some extra non um, traditional classes like art class or home ec or any types of thing like that, word working or metalwork, any of that type of stuff?
Um, well, fun fact about our middle school is that they did not do that. They
Okay.
it was just a weird. They had basically the five common core classes: math, English, reading, science, and history. And
Okay.
then we were on kind of a 7 block schedule. Would have 7 blocks. One would be PE, and then the other one was what most people could relate to as like a study hall kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we didn't have the more like, oh, there's an art class, there's a language class. We didn't have that.
Okay.
Um, High school they adopted that into their school regimen, so that's kind of what high school was, but middle school wasn't. We did though have clubs that you could attend to, but these were more you would meet either during lunchtime, break, after school. They had a book club that I was in book club in elementary school for years, and in middle school came and I hated the format of how the teacher or the main person over book club had it. So I
Yeah.
did book club, attempted to do it one time, and then was like, I'm not doing book club here. So that was kind of a bummer for me, of not being able to do it, but I just hated the style and format of it. I thought it was shitty at the time. So I quit doing book club. They also had like a let's see, band was kind of a band was kind of the only elective that I remember being there that you can consider signing up for and having that as like your class for the day. Um, But other than that, it was basically more study hall. We had one year when I was in eighth grade where it was kind of like a craft class that we got into. We crocheted and did some stuff in there. So that
Yeah.
was kind of an elective, kind of
All right. Yeah.
lightly. But mostly it was just the core classes in PE and a study hall. That's about all we had for the longest time.
Okay. And then with going to a new building and, seeing a few students that you didn't see in elementary school, um, was school one of the things that started creating this depressive state within you or feeling that you were starting to have at that point?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
In a way. Um, Middle school started to be the more kind of bullying stage. That's kind of when
Hmm.
the bullying started to begin. That's kind of where I started butting heads with my classmate. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
My air got turned on and I'm cold. Okay. Cover my vent outside might be cold. Okay, that might work. Okay. Um, but yeah, for me, middle school was kind of the starting point of when the depression to start and
Yeah.
begin. Um, I think it was about, I want to say, let me try to think of a precise grade. Fifth or sixth grade, I think is when it started, the bullying began.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of was always teased growing up, but I always thought that teasing was more like bullying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't really know the difference. I still thought it was bullying at the time.
Hmm.
So it was just I never really fully knew could decipher the difference. I was like, oh well, it's bullying. I had one kid in particularly in fifth or sixth grade be kind of um very bully like to where it was like verbal abuse a little bit.
Uh,
Uh my mom told me that he actually had put his hands on me and I had bruises. I fully do not remember that. I think that would have been something that would have really stood out to me, but I
uh,
remember she told me that I had come home and had bruises on me.
okay.
I don't really fully like recollect that.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if she is thinking of another time or has gotten confused on the timeline on that. Um,
Okay.
but he was pretty much he did apologize a little bit, kind of in the future, but at that point it was a little too late. I thought,
Right.
well, it's kind of too little, too late at that
Yeah.
point. Um, and they just that's kind of when the whole class just kind of started not really paying much attention to me. That's when more of my loneliness kind of started sinking in.
Okay.
Was around that time, and I just my class was very troublesome to begin with. We were known as the bad group of the bunch. We always would have fights happen all the time. I mean, fights that would draw blood. We would draw kind of like gashes in people's heads. I mean, my class was very this abusive to one another. We were
Oh
just
wow.
an abusive bunch to one another. We
Yeah.
hated each other so much. Um, Teachers were kind of scared of our grade. Um they actually would warn other teachers about us before we even got to the new grade, the new school year, because of just how tremendously horrible we were.
Mm.
So teachers had to be warned about our behavior so that they could be prepared. Um, we got in trouble for a little every little thing that we did.
Yeah.
And then they were in that mindset where it's like, well, if one person does something, the whole class gets punished. That was
Uh,
that kind of mentality that was
yeah.
just fucking stupid that I
Right.
hate all the time. But I, it, we was just, we were all oil and water. We didn't mix together. We didn't, once we got to high school, we kind of matured a little bit. And I think it's because we all got separated. High school
Okay.
started, and that was kind of when standard classes, advanced classes, and honor classes would begin.
Hmm.
We got separated into those classes, and then weight became a little bit more tolerable. And we
Yeah.
started to become a little bit more like, okay, we support one another during that time. I think just having the different kind of learning dynamics and different backgrounds in all the classrooms was putting us at each other's heads and butting our heads together. So high school kind of helped solve that to me. Now, granted, we still did have periodically fights happened in high school, but
Hmm.
nowhere near severe or the severity as it was when I was in middle school. It
Okay.
was we never had police called or like people go to the hospital, but I mean, we did have some brutal fights that drew blood. So that was
Yeah.
kind of the gruesome part of the fights that we had.
Gotcha. And based on the fact that everybody would get in trouble rather than the people that were actually doing it, was there any instances where you were one of those persons that were doing it, or were you always the one who was just getting caught up and getting thrown into the pot because of somebody else?
Um, Trying to think. I don't necessarily remember for me getting precisely in trouble. I always seem to feel victim. That
Okay.
just
Yeah.
happened to me all the time.
Uh-huh.
Um, they did try to get me in trouble for one thing. There was a time where we were in one of the study halls, and I think this was about sixth grade, and I think one of them had thrown like a paper airplane because paper
Yeah.
airplanes were very popular at the time.
Yeah.
Um, we they threw it and I kind of laughed because I thought they're being stupid. And then somehow I was starting to get in trouble for laughing. I thought, don't you twist this on me. I was just simply laughing and like sweeping, and I just happened to go by. And then the
Yeah.
teacher was wanting to get me in trouble because I wouldn't say who did it. And I thought, well, I don't know who threw it.
Yeah.
I said, I thought, I know you're blind, but I'm not blind. Like I thought, don't be getting me into shit that I didn't do.
Right.
That was kind of what I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So that was the closest that they got to almost getting me in trouble for something, or I almost got in trouble for something that was totally not my fault. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I always ended up getting we all when someone got in trouble, we always were the
Yeah. That's how it was for me too. Elementary and middle school eras. It was, you just got lumped in regardless whether you had any, activity in what was happening or not. You just, everybody got in trouble. So I totally understand what that perspective is like. Um, I noticed another shift in your energy when you started talking about high school and being able to be kind of away from some of those people that were creating the trouble scenarios. Did high school start to feel like a place more to where you could fit in to an extent?
not really. It
Okay.
it still was. I was kind of seen as like the outcast of the whole school,
Hmm.
and this was something that I always had like a thing growing up. It was always a thing like I could be talking and they could be like, do you hear noise? That's literally how they treated me was
Uh, okay.
I hear something, but I don't see what's making the noise
Right.
was how they treat me. I know some will think that that's not true, but it 100% was the truth. And, that's just how they always were to me. I mean, it was just, I think they started being friends with me, I think for sympathy. I think they felt sorry for me for being all by myself and lonely all the time. I think
Hmm.
that it's forced themselves to be friends with me just so that I would feel a little bit more better about myself. Um, I can't confirm that, but I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they did do that.
Okay.
Just how conniving that they could have been and how kind of devious that they could have been towards me and in the
Yeah.
past how they always were towards me. So, always knew in the back of my mind that that's how they probably were treating me. Like,
Right.
um, so it, it was kind of like you know, sometimes I said it for myself, other times I didn't. And yeah, that was just kind of, I was still kind of dealing with the same things that I had dealt with for forever, not being seen, not being heard. They don't really care
Yeah.
about whatever happened to me. So it
Mhm.
was like, it was one of those things of like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
So it had moments, but for the most part, no.
No. Was some of that um, meanness, is the way I like to put it, because that's what it is essentially. Um, that was coming from those other students. Was it because you were quiet, or was it maybe something that you did or acted in a certain way that would create that scenario where they were, you know, treating you as the outcast? Or is it, just something that's not really pinpointable, but just the way that they were?
They they bullied me on multitude of reasons. I can give a whole list. I know my father's situation was something they made fun of for the most
Okay.
part. They made fun of me for not having a father and having like the normal typical household. That was something that they did bully me on. I think how I talked as well was something that they bullied me on. I remember clothes I wore, they would make fun of. They also would make fun of like how I walked. I mean,
Mm.
anything that I did, or they could find a bully me on, they did.
Okay.
And it it got to the point where it did have a huge impact on my mental health. That's when my mental health started decreasing,
Yeah.
as well as other things. That was kind of a good main cause of kind of the downfall of my mental health was how I was treated by my classmates.
Right. Right. Was there any classes in high school that you were able to go to that allowed you to feel comfortable at all?
Hmm. Well, when high school kind of when it came about, they were a little bit nicer, quote unquote, to me.
Oh, yeah.
Um, there were some classes not so much. It was still pretty much a mixed bag. I felt a little bit more seen and heard in those classes though, so that kind of was more of a thing. But I just still tended to hang out with the same group.
Gotcha.
Now, wasn't a good group, but it was kind of the only group that at the time would talk to me.
Okay.
And so I always hung around that group of kids for the longest time. Looking back, I kind of regret that because I see how troublesome they were, and I thought that was just not a good crowd for me to be around.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything that you excelled at in high school to where maybe some of the teachers recognized something distinct within you and maybe showed a little bit more interest or a little bit more guidance at that point in time in your life?
I'm gonna be completely honest. No,
No?
they, to my memory, did not. Um, some were more supportive than others, but to my knowledge, I can't remember a particular time when a teacher came up to me and said, "You're the best student I've had in class," or "This thing that you wrote's the best thing I've ever read," or "You
Mhm.
really excelled at this thing." It was I had some good teachers that were supportive and, would have that door open to where if I ever needed to come to them for anything, I could,
Mhm.
but never got that recognition from them of like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing that I've ever had a student do," or "You're really
Right.
going to exceed doing this." Mm-mm, never got
Yeah.
that.
Is there anything that you personally felt that you were really good at in high school?
It's not academic wise, but
Okay.
hiding my mental health I was really good at that.
Mm.
I hid
Chameleon.
that thing so well.
So you were the chameleon. Yeah,
Yep.
I get it. Totally get it. Did I'm assuming as well that going back home uh, during that time, even uh, high school, there wasn't anything at home either that was lifting any of those spirits within you. Is that correct? Or was there something that was able to give you some kind of breathing room?
Um, well, when I was in 8th grade, my grandmother got sick with Alzheimer's and dementia, so that kind of made a huge
Mm,
shakeup in the household at that time. She
yeah,
became a little bit more violent, more belligerent when it came to her mental state and her mind. So that was kind of a punch in the gut to come home to after a hard day at school is having to
right.
face that. Um, she passed away when I was in high school as a freshman. I had just turned 15 and she had lost her battle with it. In a way, it was kind of a breath of fresh air because
Sure.
she was finally free from that. And I was also kind of, I thought, you know what, I'm free from that. I don't have to witness that anymore.
Hmm.
And Um, so that was one thing. So after she had passed, things at home started to get a little bit better. Now, granted, I still would have arguments with my mom and grandfather, especially my grandfather at the time. Um, but after my grandmother had passed, it just felt different being there.
Yeah.
You didn't have to like walk on eggshells. You didn't have to worry about if she was going to remember who I was, if she was going to hit you or anything. So it was just
Right.
a different dynamic. But um, for a little bit there, the family did have something, but then after a while, it actually started to be a little bit more uplifting.
Okay. Yeah. At that age, I can imagine how scary that is, even watching a grandparent start to not recognize you, start to change in mood and reaction and different things like that. And with you already experiencing, some uh, things at school where you were feeling like the outsider, and the home, quote unquote, being supposed to be the safe place for you. Um, Going home to somebody who's not acting the same as they did for most of your life, I imagine that was really, really stressful. Um, Having to walk into that type of environment after you've been in this other environment that's not so pleasing during the day.
Hmm.
Yeah, I get it. In high school, where when you didn't have to have a chaperone, so to speak, to go down to the lake, was that something that you started doing more often?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did a lot in high school was go down there. I would always just kind of get on my phone and I would listen to music all the time, and it was just peaceful for me down there.
Yeah.
I um yeah, when I was a freshman, I started doing that every day that it was warm, I tried to go down there. Um
Hmm.
and sometimes even in the wintertime I would go down there. It was
Okay.
just kind of a way for me to kind of me time and escape
Yeah.
down there. I
Yeah.
loved going down there. I don't go down there as much anymore since I've grown up and I've got, other things in life to worry about and, have to do. But
Yeah.
for a 15-year-old kid at the time,
Right.
peaceful,
Yeah,
very beneficial for me.
for sure. What was some of the music that helped put you in that peaceful mode at that point in time that you were listening to?
I listened to a lot of pop at the time. Pop and country was kind of the typical main ones that I heard all the time.
Okay.
I listened to some R&B and rap. It wasn't kind of as R&B wasn't as listened to as it is now. I listen to a lot of R&B now. Um, but it was just pop all the time. That's basically all I really played and listened to was that and then country because
Okay.
just because from where I'm from.
Yeah. South is a country region. It's kind of just part of the fabric of society down there. Did you have high school dances and stuff at the school that you went to?
We did. I never went to them because it was
Gotcha.
just pointless to
Okay.
go.
Gotcha. Uh, there was never any interest on your part of wanting to go with anybody else, or was it just your feelings of nobody's really going to want to go with me?
Mixture of both. I knew that no one would probably want to go with me, and even if I asked everyone that I wanted to go to probably would go with, I already had someone to go with and was
Okay.
already in a relationship. So that was always a thing. But yeah, I never got asked. I only got asked to the dance one time from a girl in eighth grade, and I think she was dared to ask me. I firmly
Uh,
believe to this day that it wasn't a genuine, like, do you want to go to this? I feel like she was dared to come up to ask me about it.
yeah.
Changed my mind on anything, but I firmly believe that was not a genuine, like, oh, do you want to go? She was
Okay.
definitely probably. dared by her friends to come up and ask me.
Right, right. Did you start working at all in high school to make some extra money for yourself or anything like that?
My parents did a really good job they were supportive and didn't make me work at the time
Okay.
due to just how my mental health was and how I was real focused on school. So
Yeah.
I was kind of spoiled and didn't have to work in high school like most kids do. But I focused a lot on my schoolwork, and that's where a lot of my hard work kind of paid off was studying in the books.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, so from that perspective, there was some recognition that you were dealing with some depression and stuff like that. Um, did they suggest or offer to see if you could get some help from somebody outside of, the home environment, like a therapist or anything like that?
Oh, my mom, when I told her everything I was going through, she's like, "Oh yeah, you have it." She just self-diagnosed me at the time. I didn't even have to go to a doctor's office. She just
Right.
self-diagnosed me, but of course we went to a doctor to get it officially diagnosed. And
Yeah.
they offered me some therapy services. I was in that mindset of therapy was like, that's for the cuckoo people. I've not lost my mind yet. I'm not. I was kind of in that stigma of you have to be crazy to go to a therapist. So I
Got
always declined it. Um, they wanted me to go to I think a psychiatrist, and I was kind of in the same situation. I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. Um, they put me on medicine.
Okay.
I did take medicine for it. It helped in some regards. Some days it was better, some days it wasn't. But I still took the medicine every day, just kind of help possibly lower that chance. Uh, but the good thing that really kind of helped me was my mom had a history of mental health issues. She had depression, and she didn't have anxiety per se, but depression was very prominent in her. So
Mm-hmm.
she knew kind of the signs of depression and kind of was like, oh, well, I can help you guide through that. So she was my support system through that. And my family knew kind of what mental health was because we
Yeah.
had a history of it in our family. So it
Okay.
was something that was like, oh, well,
Yeah.
we're not
Did
going.
you, I was gonna say, did you know of any relatives that had um, gone to therapy or anything like that, or were they also kind of the same mindset? We know we have it, and we're not that bad off. We just have it.
I don't remember anyone from my immediate family going to therapy. A lot of my older relatives had that mindset of they didn't think mental health was a thing,
Okay.
that they would have just thought that you were crazy.
Yeah.
So mental health and like depression, anxiety, bipolar, ADHD, that none of that really, they're like, no, that's not a thing. So, they probably had it, but they just denied having it and don't, I guess they thought it was some kind of conspiracy theory or just something made up from someone. It wasn't like a genuine thing to them.
Yeah.
So to my knowledge, I don't really remember any of my family going to therapy.
Okay. Okay. I remember when I was a little kid, like elementary school, we would go visit my great grandma, and she lived up on a mountain in East Tennessee, and you'd have to park at the bottom of the hill and walk up this long, uh, kind of like pathway to get up to where her house was up on the hill. And she didn't have uh, running water, and she didn't have electricity and all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting going up there because at that young age that I was at that time, I could see uh, that she didn't have a real uplifting mood. She was what I, from my perspective, she had this depressed state about her. And I remember at that point in time too that I was feeling that type of stuff. So I can remember feeling that from a little kid, uh, not, being very uh, joyful about my environment and, you know, the different things that were around me. I always had that sense early on of, man, I'm just sad. Just I don't know what to do. I don't know what causes this or why it's happening, that kind of thing. But I was able to recognize that in relatives. And now, of course, too many years of being in therapy and um, diving into the whole concept of generational traumas and different things like that that are passed down, which, you know, a lot of times it's not considered that it's a passed down type of thing that runs in the family, but there's many studies out there that show that yes, it is something that can be passed down through generations. And the older that I am and have that experience behind me, I'm able to look at the different family members who I noticed, you know, as a young kid that maybe weren't as joyful when I was around them, able to recognize that sadness that was in them. Also, too, there was a element of income status that was in play throughout my family. I would say that mostly uh, lower to lower middle class income levels. Um, not there wasn't a whole lot that were, you know, upper middle class and beyond that. So I saw that dynamic in terms of what I was around as a kid down south as well, and then too even when we would be back here in Michigan, we weren't ever really um, much more than just middle class family. Um, so I know that those types of things play into, you know, what goes on uh, within the family structure. As you're moving closer to the end of high school, um, are you thinking that, yeah, I'm going to go off to college and I have this in mind of what I want to dive into when I go to college? Or was it something that was maybe suggested by your grandparents, or some teachers, or did you have it in your head of what you had that was going to take place after you graduated?
Well, at the time, I didn't really have a particular plan of what I wanted to do as a career. You know, I had a typical doctor, veterinarian, you know, kind of the more jobs that paid the most. I also wanted to be like a biologist at the time because of my love for animals.
Okay.
But then I was like, I don't know if that's something I want to do full time. So I was like, okay. So I decided to kind of change. And I remember that I was watching, I used to watch a lot of talk shows growing up, and talk shows were always fascinated by me and everything. And I thought that's what I want to do. That's what I would like to do is have my own talk show and be able to talk just to guests and celebrities and have fun games and just have a really good time. Well, I didn't really know what that would have fell under. I did, and of course, I had to Google it and find some research and found that journalism. You had to have a degree in journalism, and I thought, okay. So I signed up with journalism, and that was kind of the thing that I stuck with the whole way through college. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I just didn't know at the time what I wanted until that moment. And then after that, it was just kind of an easy game plan of like, okay, I'm just going to do it this way, and then not have to double think it or anything. So mm, that was kind of a beneficial thing for me. But I always knew, and I knew Auburn was going. I always wanted Auburn to be kind of the place that I wanted to go to. There was really no other college in my mind that I wanted to attend. And then my parents were like, well, if you don't get into Auburn, where you gonna go? I don't know. That's literally the mindset I had. Of course, I went
Yeah.
to our community college for 2 years to get a lot of my basics down, which still I still had to take it Auburn because they screwed up, but they, other than Auburn, I didn't really have any other school that I wanted to go to.
Okay. And how far away was Auburn from where you lived at that point in time?
2.5 hours. So
Okay.
it's like a two and
So
a
it's short
half,
walk.
and then sometimes it was like a 3 hour drive, depending on how fast or slow you drove.
Okay.
Um, but it was about 2.5, 3 hours.
Gotcha. And was it, did you have to work while you were going to college, or was your mom and grandparent helping you out at that point as well?
They were still helping me out at that point. I I tried to get jobs at that time,
Hmm.
but with COVID happening right when it started, that
Yeah.
kind of was a little difficult for me to do. Um, they were supportive for the community college. I was still able to stay home because the community college I went to was like 15 minutes away. It was the
Hmm.
same distance as it was to my high school. So I got to
Gotcha.
stay home for an additional 2 years after that. And then in 2022, for August, I transferred to Auburn. Of course, lived down there for 2 years, would come back on breaks or during the summer. And then I just kind of bounced between there, Auburn and home for 2.5 years. And then last about almost a year ago, I moved back home because it got too expensive. But um,
Gotcha.
yeah, I tried working during that time. When I went to my community college, I tried to get into jobs around my town. They just did not want to hire me.
Hmm.
Um, one place went to was like a coffee shop, and because I thought that's an easy thing, but they said I had to be 21 because alcohol was involved, and I thought who the hell's put alcohol in their coffee? I thought, oh, okay. So I thought, all right. And I went to other places as well, and they just kind of told me the same thing. We'll be in touch, never got in touch, or the interview never had a follow up. It was just ghostly mostly. And then Auburn was kind of the same way. I started doing DoorDash when I
Okay.
was started going to Auburn, and that made pretty decent. It wasn't like groundbreaking money, but I mean, it was kind of a job at that point. It was more freelance. I could do it whenever I wanted.
Right.
And so I did that off and on for a few years. And yeah, that's kind of how where I was still being mostly supportive by my parents.
Okay.
Um, but I was real focused in on school and I really put a lot of my time in school.
Gotcha. And shifting out of high school and starting to go to the community college, um, this is around the time that you said your anxiety started really acting up for you. Was it because of it being a completely different environment, or was there some other stressors that started to take place that were creating this anxiety that would surface for you?
My anxiety diagnosis started when I was in high school. It actually was my senior year. I think it was about January, February, um, 2 or 3 months before high school graduation. And I started having these weird, just nauseous, sick feelings. I was like, this is odd. I initially thought that I had the flu or had some kind of stomach bug going around because that was common at that time of the year. Um, so we didn't really think anything of it. Went to the doctor. They didn't really find anything alarming. So we said, okay. This sort of kept happening for for a month and a few weeks, and we're like, okay, something bigger's going on here. We went
Yeah.
back to the doctor and was telling him all the symptoms I had. He couldn't figure it out. They tried eliminating everything. Was I being bullied at school? Was there something at home that was bothering me? Was school being difficult? And other than one class being difficult from that question, everything that he had asked me was like, nope. They're actually home life's doing really well in school. I have all A's and B's, and then my classmates were actually treating me fairly well at that time. So I said, I don't know what could be causing this. He said, He wanted me to stay out of school for a week to see if it was something maybe within school and
Okay.
have a follow-up checkup, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Um, well, I stayed out of school for that week, and it actually went away, and so we
Yeah.
came back, and he said, "I think you have anxiety." He said, "Let me explain." Usually, when you have anxiety, you feel kind of you can't breathe, you have something here in your chest.
Mhm.
Well, he did say that in some circumstances, that there is a possibility where people do have anxiety attacks and anxiety in the forms of stomach issues,
Yeah.
where it was nausea to the point where you had mentioned that you would vomit.
Mhm.
That's kind of what how anxiety was. He said
Yeah.
it's not rare, but it's not common, but said that it's a possibility of what happens. And over the years, I've met more and more people that have had that same issue, but at the time I thought, well, great, no one else I know has that. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, so what's, I thought, okay, how do we gonna go about this? He gave me a few recommendations. He recommended that I do homeschooling. He said, even though it's March and you graduate in 2 months, if this helps you with your anxiety and helps mitigate it, I would say do homeschool.
Okay.
And if they say any alternatives, I'll come in and help you get into that homeschool. He said that I'll give them a doctor's note, I'll give them a medical reason,
Yeah.
and we'll get you homeschooled.
Okay.
Well, luckily we didn't have to do that. We were borderline like this close to like going to our counselor, telling the situation of what's happening. But then COVID happened and the school shut down for the rest of the school year, so we didn't have to worry about that. Um, but the damage from the anxiety had already been done. Everything made me nervous at that point. So
Yeah.
this kind of trends it led into college. And by the time I was about halfway through my time at Gadsden State, my anxiety was so severe.
Mm.
It was just drastically severe.
Yeah. I completely understand what it's like to have anxiety and have it affect your stomach. Um, when I was experiencing what I was experiencing with the stomach issues, they were just saying I just worried too much. They didn't. It wasn't even being considered as an anxiety disorder. It's just say he just worries too much, so it affects your stomach. And my doctor put me on Tagamet, which is just a medication to kind of calm the stomach down. And then I took that for I don't even remember how many years I took that, but eventually my body just rejected it. Like I started getting sick from taking the Tagamet because what it does is it stops all of those stomach juices and everything that you need to digest your food and all that kind of stuff, all the enzymes that are created there. It starts creating a an unnatural gut biome. So I just had to completely stop it at a certain point just because I couldn't take it any longer. And then I didn't ever go on anything else at that point in time for my stomach issues. Around that time, I was able to switch over to just an anxiety medication that helped kind of calm me down a little bit. So I definitely understand what that's like. With and also too, for your from your perspective, I imagine that the pandemic did not help the anxiety level whatsoever of what was going on in the world. I imagine it just compounded everything.
It didn't help it, but I liked lockdown a lot because I
Oh,
was able to focus on myself and I was not have to worry about school for like 6 months. I thought that was paradise to me.
yeah,
But um yeah, the pandemic didn't really help with anxiety at all. So there were still some aspects of like leaving the house that I was like
yeah,
was wary about, but um it. I don't want to say made it worse, but it just didn't help the cause of it.
Sure, sure. Um, you mentioned as well some of the suicidal ideation started taking place. Did that also start back in high school, or was it just after you got out of high school?
And actually, it started in middle school. I was
Oh, wow.
early. I was very early when I started contemplating suicide. When it was right around the time I got my depression. So 13, 14. I was very young.
Yeah.
And yeah, it stemmed when I had really bad depression spells. That's the only time I really think about that.
Hmm.
So there have only been about three times I've really co- thought about just doing
Ending it.
suicide.
Yeah.
Was middle school, uh, when I got diagnosed with COVID in 2020 and last year.
Okay.
Those have been the only three times that I can remember that have been so severe to where I was just like, I'm done.
Right. Right. And for you, because it's different for everybody, when those start coming into play, and that voice starts running around in your mind and telling you different things. Was it a scenario that nobody really likes me at school, and I don't really have that kind of a connection going on? Um, or did you feel like you were a burden to people, that you were wanting to end things for yourself?
I think for me, it was more just kind of how life was,
Okay.
just how my life was going at the time and how nothing was working in my favor, nothing was going well for me. And I
Hmm.
thought, well, there's just no point in me being here anymore. So
Right.
yeah, I had that mindset of, I just don't have any point of being here anymore. So that was kind of the mindset. Now, the bullying, of course, didn't help. The thing at home didn't help. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of things that also kind of agged it on to where it was like, this is just not helping me at all. But I never went through with it because I was kind of, well, put it kind of nasty pussy about it. I just never really, I was kind of a pussy about it. I got scared, never really attempted to do like hanging, cutting, all that. I just was like, nah, I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Sure. Now, and there's nothing, and I'm gonna say this from my perspective. There's nothing wrong with having those feelings, because when you start having that suicidal ideation, and those start coming in, and that little voice is telling you you'd be better off if you just weren't here. You just exit.
Mm,
Um, it doesn't always play out the scenario of the options for you. It just says you need to end it. And so, when you start thinking about those things of, okay, hang myself, cut my wrists, cut my throat, any of that type of stuff, shoot myself, jump off a bridge, jump off a building, whatever, if I'm in my car, run into a tree, run into something solid, any of those types of things. The the thought process then comes into play of, that's going to hurt. And if we have any aversion to pain whatsoever, just that little inclination of, oh, wow, that's going to hurt. And also, too, I may not fully, complete this task. So there's
mm,
kind of a counter talk that starts taking place in the brain with that voice. And that voice is just, you know, it is what it is. It's that critic that's telling you that you've never been good, or never been a positive impact on the world, or you're not worth it, you don't have any value, all those types of things. It's just that negative critic chatter that takes place. So, from my perspective, understanding what that is all about because I did have an attempt myself. Um, I understand what that feeling is like. So I just want to let you know that you don't have to feel like you're less than because you didn't try. If anything, it takes more courage not to try than it does to go ahead and attempt it. So I just want to highlight that for you, that as much inner critic that you may have that tells you you're not of a whole particular lot of value, I can definitely see that you have a whole lot of courage within you because you've kept going. You've turned into that mental health warrior who now wants to try and help other people who may have similar circumstances to what you have. And, just from your story so far, you didn't have you didn't have an optimal start, right?
Right.
You had some things that were um, a bit difficult to deal with from the get go. So, you know, it is it's not something to just exclude uh, from your mindset or your life experience. It just is what it is. All right. And so getting to the place that you are shows the amount of courage that you have within you and the amount of resilience that you have within you. Even though, like you said, I had some of that going on last year. Um, and that still creeps in every so often. I know it does for me. So it's
Hmm.
not a scenario of it's never going to happen again. And if I do something, then or if I don't do something because I'm just afraid to, it's not any one of those things that you should take on and put yourself down even more so. What you should look at and what I'm looking at for you and seeing, and I want to highlight for the audience, is the fact that you have a tremendous amount of resilience to get this far in life and to be where you're at currently.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought up the point of about the it'll never fully go away. For some people, it will fully go away, and
Yeah.
if it does, that's a man blessing. Think of
Yep.
that as the biggest blessing you'll ever have. But for the most part, it doesn't fully go away. Now, the medicine does help. Medicine can be a godsend, but of course, medicine's not going to be kind of a thing for all people. Um,
Right.
what will happen is that, and you, Rich, had kind of mentioned this, excuse me, earlier, that even medicine can wear off and start actually making you more sick than actually helping. And
Yep.
so, I want people to know that my anxiety fully has gone away. Now, granted, I do get anxiety spells from time to time, and I do get it. That doesn't
Yeah.
fully go away. The depression, I think, is something that I'm just going to have to live with for the rest of my life till I die, because it's just I have such a huge, strong thing of depression that it's just going to be really hard to rid of
Hmm. Hmm.
get rid of it. So, that's just something that I'm just gonna have to brace for and be like, you know what, this is just what I'm gonna have to prepare for. So, I would say that don't think that it's just gonna 100% go away, because chances are it doesn't. It just gets smaller.
Yeah. Smaller, lesser, not as extreme. And a lot of that too has to do with, you know, being your own advocate and trying to figure out what are the best things for me to be able to cope and to manage this. Um, for you, for most of your life, the lake was a place of safety, a place where you could kind of relax and feel like you were not abnormal. Um, and, if somebody else is out there that has, the opportunity to be out in nature, I know nature is a huge benefit to relieving some of those stressors and some of that depression and anxiety because um, it's just that type of environment. It's calming. It's energizing. It's uh, comforting. All of those things. Um, and I think too, like you said, for everybody, it doesn't completely go away. It stays with us for most of our life. But the key is being able to recognize the pattern of when that might be coming in, when you start noticing those feelings taking place and realizing, okay, now I need to start doing some of the things that help me get through it. I need to start implementing those back in again because doing so, like I said, it's being your own advocate, making sure that you're taking care of you all of the time. Because ultimately, that's the thing that matters most is taking care of you. Because if you don't take care of you, you can never take care or help anybody else because you don't have a full cup. And it's that, glass half filled type scenario. If you're walking around and you've got a half filled glass, like you can't really share that with a whole lot of people because you don't have as much. But if you are able to recognize these things starting to creep in for yourself, and then you can start implementing the things that help get you through those times earlier and get them implemented earlier each time that you have one of these scenarios take place, or even if it's, just your environment, circumstances, different things, recognizing those and addressing, all right, is this a circumstance that's creating this depression, or is it my physical uh, body makeup? Is my physiology off that's creating this depression? And a lot of times it's one or the other. Sometimes it's both combined. And just being able to pay attention to those things and recognize it is a thing that helps get you through sometimes. It's a thing that helps move farther along. Sometimes it helps you realize things that, you may not have realized when you were younger. So, those are the types of things that I try to encourage people to start paying attention to if they're dealing with, depression and anxiety like the both of us do, is that, you have to start being your own advocate. You have to start assessing, what has triggered this time around? Why am I starting to experience this again when I may have gone a huge amount of time without experiencing this, whether it's years or months or, weeks. Just being able to look at it and see what's happening. That's important. Um, as you're in the community college and looking to transfer to Auburn, did you decide in community college that you wanted to go into journalism when you got to Auburn, or was that something that maybe you started off at the community college?
I started doing the journalism when I was in high school. That's kind of what I signed up for. And so when I first started doing college classes, that's what my major was. And I never changed it. So when I changed for the Auburn, I still stayed in journalism. I was really motivated and destined to do the talk show thing. So I was
Yeah,
like, I'm standing firm on that. I'm not changing, excuse me, um, my decision in that. Um, so when I went to Auburn, I of course went to my advisor that I was assigned to at the time, and she was helps me get in the right classes for my major, and she was a really good advisor for me. We had some button heads a little bit, but I think anyone has that with their advisor. Um, but for the most part, my major kind of stayed the same through my whole college experience, never changed it. But when it kind of got closer to like my last year and especially like last semester, I thought I can't really change it now. So I was in that mindset of, well, if I hate it, this is just going to be a decision on my part.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Once you graduated, did did the podcast scenario feel like that was the easiest way for you to start into putting that into practice for yourself?
It's it started every day to become more and more easier to kind of decipher and really go with. I once I graduated, um I started to look around town a lot about classes that I or jobs. I looked at radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, magazines. I mean, virtual or in person. I just looked at any way, shape, or form that I could find when it came to my journalism degree.
Hmm.
And nothing stood out. I couldn't find really much anything. Um, it stemmed from the same mindset of, okay, you don't have the experience. You are kind of a newbie to this. We're just are not or we're not looking for one right now. That was just the experience I was getting. I started to just go to even everyday jobs, and then when I went to those jobs, I was too qualified. I was too experienced. So I was stuck in this middle ground of, well, I'm too experienced to work at fast food or a department store, but yet I'm not qualified enough to work at a big job. I was just stuck in a middle rut of like no one's hiring me. I
Yeah.
started doing DoorDash again. I did work at a trampoline park that lasted only a week because it was just not for me.
Okay.
Um, but podcasting just sort of fell into my lap. I started posting last year, about a month or two after I had graduated,
Hmm.
and it was a hobby at first. I wasn't really getting paid. I didn't know anything about Podmatch or any of these podcasting opportunities about that you can actually sign up for and participate in. I
Yeah.
just did it as a simple hobby to kind of do in my downtime. And then about May of last year, I got an email from Alex, which people, if you're on Podmatch, knows he's the founder. Him and his wife Alicia both founded Podmatch. He
Hmm.
reached out to me in an email and said, "Hey, I recently heard an episode of yours from your podcast. Really loved the format, loved the message that you were giving, and thought that your podcast would be a really good fit for our podcast network at Podmatch. Would you be interested in maybe signing up?" Um, he gave me some links to look into. I did some research to make sure it wasn't another scam because I was getting so many scam emails about job offers and opportunities to do multitude of things. But then I thought, but it was for podcasting. And I said, that's kind of a sign. If it's for podcasting, I thought maybe
Yeah.
that's a sign. So I did a lot of research, did not find any negative reviews about Podmatch. I mean, did even see like a 4 or even a 4.5 star review. So
Right.
I was like, oh, so they are like legit.
Hmm.
So I messaged him back and I said, okay, I'm interested to tell me the next steps of what to do. And we'll go from there. He sent me a sign up link, signed up, and started my journey on Podmatch. Um, it was only like $6 a month too. So I mean, if I didn't like it at the time, I thought, you know what, it's not that huge big of a deal. It's not gonna be a huge like, oh, this is gonna be a bad thing for me. This I
Right.
wasted so much money. But
Yeah.
it's a really good deal for like a podcaster that's wanting to start doing interviews.
Yeah.
And I also too wanted to begin interviews as well. Up until that point, it was just most every episode was solo. It was all
Okay.
me, no guests came in, no outside thing, nothing. I did have some of my audience participate, but like I never had anyone come on the show. So I thought, well, this is new. So I did my first interview, I think in June that of last year.
Hmm.
And with me having my journalism degree and doing interviews and stuff, I wasn't as nervous. I was so nervous
Yeah.
because it was my first podcast interview. I was real nervous because I thought, oh my God, someone said yes. Someone actually reached out to me and it was like, I read your show, thought it's a good fit. And I thought, oh, so there's a lot of nerves, but with my background in journalism, it actually kind of helped
Yeah.
with my being able to go about interview styles.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. That was one of the things that, again, I want to highlight for you that is a huge asset that you have is you are a good interviewer. You you asked inquisitive questions that are not too probing, and you always, you know, uh, clarify that if it is too probing, you don't have to answer that kind of thing. And I appreciated that from my perspective with the interview that I did with you. Um, and it was kind of the same scenario with me with finding Podmatch. And for all the audience out there that might be listening to this, it's a huge platform that provides a ton of opportunity. Um, and the biggest opportunity that it provides for somebody who's starting out with a podcast is the fact that it's a revenue share. So every time that you interview somebody, you get a percentage for doing that interview, and then you get another percentage once you release that episode of that interview that you did. So you can literally start off, like you said, that initial hosting subscription is just $6 a month. So you can start off and do 2 interviews a month and make money uh, off of being on this platform. And it's a huge networking space, huge opportunity to talk to various people of various different ages, depending on what your genre is with your podcast and what your topics are, all those kinds of things. Um, and so I was able to see um, just when I was researching your platform that you had a journalism degree. And then I saw how that you know, hosted the interview. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's putting his journalism degree to work for sure. The other aspect that I want to highlight for the audience is podcasting doesn't always get thrown into the creative genres of the world that we are living, but I believe that it's becoming more and more prevalent as a creative field to go into because you have to have some kind of creativity to be able to have an idea about what you want your podcast to be. You have to have an idea of what you want your branding to look like, your visuals, your thumbnails for each episode. Um, and it takes a lot of creativity to also navigate questions. Do you just ask the question and get the answer, or do you respond back? That type of it takes creativity to formulate a conversation. And that's one of the things that you are really good at, is the fact that once you start asking the questions, you're able to respond to the question with a reply and then pivot into the next question moving forward. So you're doing a fantastic job. Um, One of the things I absolutely wanted to ask you to find out from a creative standpoint, your first podcast that you did and started was Lethal Venom. And that's a podcast that's wrapped around comedy and tough topics. And tough topics was the reason that you asked me on because of uh, my background with mental health and depression and suicide and all of that type of stuff. How did you come up with that name, Lethal Venom? And what does that name mean for you and from your perspective?
lethal venom really stems from the truth. That's really what I loved, and that's what I wanted my podcast to be centered around. At first, it was more, I wanted people to hear my truth and hear what I've been silenced about for years. And
Yeah.
I came, like the first few episodes I released, I came out with, for blood. I came out with daggers and knives of just saying some harsh, like really truth telling things about my life, about my things with mental health, how my classmates treated me, just how
Yeah.
job hunting. I mean, I came out with weapons
Venom.
when I
Yeah.
first started podcasting, and then it kind of turned into more of a okay. I think because I was running out of ideas of what to talk about too, and I was like, so when Alex messaged me, it was actually a really good perfect timing because I was really starting to dwindle on like
Yeah.
episode ideas and everything. And I thought, you know what? I've spoken my truth. And there'll be times where I still do solo episodes from time to time, but I want to make it to where other people can share their truth and have just regular conversations with everyone of all backgrounds. So the name kind of comes from the saying of how the truth hurts. When people
Yeah.
hear it, sometimes it can be real harmful and lethal to them to hear, and how venom's lethal to humans. That's how the truth can be. So
Yeah.
that's how the name kind of came around. It took a lot of trial and errors about naming, because I wanted my podcast to be kind of fitting, but I also didn't want it to be kind of a copy of the. I wanted my name to be unique. I wanted it to be a name like you could search it, I'd be the first one pop up.
Yep.
Um, and that was hard at first because every good name that I had was already being used.
Right.
And I know that probably it wouldn't be um I don't know, people could say, well, you could technically have used the same name as them because usually if you're the most popular one, you're going to be the first one that pops up. And I thought, well, I never expected my show to blow up as much as it did. So I
Hmm.
thought, I wanted it to be kind of easy for people. And, I've used that name so much. I think any other name right now would not fit it.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if I decided to change it to Venom, I'd be like, "Welcome to the Venom podcast." I'd be like, "That's not that's not it."
Yeah.
So it just Lethal Venom just really so and every it sparks so many questions because people see that it's like I've had so many guests come on that say I am intrigued and interested by the name because they it's just not a normal name for a podcast that you would hear.
Right.
You wouldn't hear something like that. So I it gets people talking. It also gets people to ask those questions of like, well, how'd you come up with the name? And I love when people ask me that question because it really help. It just kind of lightens me up a little bit to where I'm like, oh, finally, I can actually kind of share that.
Yeah.
And some of my friends were like, okay, and they're like, you're not going to ask follow up questions. They're like,
Right. Exactly.
what do you mean? And I'm just like, never mind. So I love my friends now, the friends that I have now, but sometimes they drive me crazy. But um they're so supportive and I'm just been kind of shocked at how well the podcast has done. To this day, I still get like, how did I get from this to that? It just is a whirlwind of like, I just don't know how I got here.
Yeah. Well, number one, you're good at it. You're good at what you do. And having those hard conversations and telling those hard truths, eventually people start to look for that because there's not enough of that going on in the world. Right. And, those are that combination allows for opportunity for success. And I think that's what's taking place for you. Um, at least that's how it is from my perspective, anyways. And knowing you, the little bit of time that I have, and being on your show, and then now you coming on mine. The other two podcasts that you have now, you didn't have when I came on your show, or hadn't really put it out there that you have those. Let's go to the next one, Music Talks. What what was the idea of why you wanted to dive into that? Was it because of the fact that when you were at the lake, when you were younger, around 15, when you said you really started to be able to go there by yourself and hang out, was it because of the music that you were listening to then that you now wanted to start talking about with others and finding out what they liked and albums that they were drawn to?
Um, well, actually, I never even thought about that angle. The
Oh,
original thing for the podcast was because I just don't like to shut up talking. That was literally the main reason why I came up with it. But another thing was I was a huge music person, and you don't see a lot of podcasts that do a lot of like reviews and stuff. I thought, I
mm,
want to do that. Now, I've only posted 4 episodes.
okay.
So here's the thing with owning multiple podcasts is I wanted it to be more of a balance. I thought, okay, I can do maybe one, I can film two or record two of these episodes for Lethal Venom, record two for the Southern Reads, record a few for Music Talks, and then spend time editing those. When Lethal Venom took off, I didn't want to lose that momentum of gain. And I think anyone that has that's in the business or has done that, once an idea takes off and is doing real well, everything gets put on the back burner. Everything's like,
Right.
okay, everything's put to the side. So the book podcast, I think, actually was out when I interviewed you, but I was not posting any episodes on it because Lethal Venom started to get traction at that time.
Okay.
And so I don't promote them on when I do the outro because I don't want to be promoting it and I'm not posting like episodes right now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I do kind of say on like go to my website to see the other podcasts I do. That's kind of the only time I ever mentioned that I have more than one show. But
Okay.
this one's the main one. But the general idea behind the music one, the name actually was it's kind of a interesting. It's not like groundbreaking. It's not funny at all either, but it's just when I was in college, I took a let me see what the class was called. Magazine and feature writing, I think it was called.
All right.
It's technically a writing class. And we had to write one story for our kind of our final project. And I wanted it, and she said, our teacher said, you can have the paper be on whatever subject you want it to be. It can be whatever you want. And I thought, well, I was a huge, of course, music at the time. I didn't have a lot of good things in podcasting. This was before Lethal Venom was born. This was before it kind of got published out to the public. So this
Hmm.
was still like I hadn't even started working on it yet.
Yeah.
There was I centered that paper around music, and I actually called the paper Music Talks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's the title came from how music speaks to us in multitude of ways. And it kind of stemmed from I might could pull it up. I don't think I might could pull it up now. I realize that just as recently, Microsoft now has come out with a thing where you have to pay a subscription to be able to use Microsoft Word, which I think is stupid. Um,
Yeah. Everything's
I
becoming
was
a subscription now.
I was like, really, the one thing that I was not too happy about it.
Yeah.
Um, oh, this might take me a second to find. Hopefully, I didn't delete it. I tend to just delete stuff because I don't need it at all. That tends to
Hmm.
be a thing that happens
All right.
with me. I don't see it anywhere. Well, I'll kind of talk about it while I find it. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of a one of the first opening lines that I had of it was, um, I wanted this to be a way for me to um, be a way to talk about my music. And, music can speak to us in multitude of forms.
Right.
Um, okay, I was able to find it. Okay, good. Um, I gotta look and see. Um, yeah, this was kind of all from the first chapter, um, or first paragraph. I said, through loud bass, powerful vocals, and descriptive lyrics, music has a way of speaking to us in multiple forms. It can trigger emotions of happiness, sadness, joy, as well as many others. Music has been around for centuries and has expanded quickly and continues to grow. With a variety of different genres that range from pop, R&B, country, and rap, over the past few years, new genres have developed over time, like Afro beats, and I kind of
Hmm.
go into more of a thing. And then I actually interviewed um a person for my podcast for the paper. Um, that he was a music director there at Auburn. He worked in it. His name actually ended up being Noah as well, which was kind of
Oh,
funny. I
yeah.
was like, okay, so this is gonna be interesting to write about. I
Yeah.
thought with the name. But he worked in the music department there. We had a good conversation about music and everything, and I thought, I really was proud of the name and title of that paper. My teacher really liked it as well. I just
Hmm.
named the podcast after that. I thought, it whatever what I said in that intro was kind of a stem of how the podcast is built up as. Music speaks to us in a multitude of ways. It speaks to us in just different ways through the lyrics, through the production, and it can be from genres too. So I'm trying to get back into a more of a balance, but this podcast, I love Lethal Venom to death. This is the passion project I have. I don't have any tendencies of stopping it, but I swear it makes it difficult to try to do other things because of just how successful it is, but or just how well and how many good opportunities it's given to me. But I'm like, take a little bit of a break. I want to get my other two podcasts up and going, but I can't because you know focus all on this one. But it's like children, and it's like the main kid that's like
Yeah.
the star of the crowd. It's like the kid that's taking all the spotlight. It's
Right.
like let your other siblings shine. Let take a break. Let the other siblings have a moment. But the kid ain't having it happen. But
Yeah.
um, but I'm really proud of all of them, even though I've not posted many on the other two. I'm just happy and proud that they're out and that they're there, and I was able to have it released.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And let's talk about Southern Reads. Is that based off of books that you've read, or are you interviewing authors, or what is the premise from Southern Reads?
Uh, the original idea that I had for the podcast for the book one was kind of a mixture of interviews and kind of more like think of it like book club. You kind
Yeah,
of had nailed it at the beginning, book club as a podcast. So I would
yeah,
read a book and then do like an open discussion about the book on the podcast and give like some plot details about what happens and what you normally would talk about in a book club setting.
sure.
Um, so that's kind of how it was. And then I thought, oh, I can interview authors, I can interview book enthusiasts on there as well. So that's kind of how it stems, and kind of the same way with Music Talks. I've only posted, I think, 4 episodes on there. I think I deleted one episode, so it's down to three now because one episode I thought it just kind of was out of place. If I
Yeah,
started posting, it's just so out of place. I thought there's really no point for having that episode in there. So I did end up deleting or removing that one. But I am going to hopefully start doing those again. I mean, I have ideas. The thing with the
yeah.
music and the book one, I have episode ideas planned. I know what I
Okay.
could talk about. It's just the time to try to get around to filming and sit down and actually record. That's
Yeah,
being the main pain in the butt for me right now.
yeah. I get it. It's a lot of work, and people don't realize how much work that it takes to put into a podcast. especially from my perspective, I'm doing audio and video. So just editing in and of itself takes up time. Doing the graphics for it, doing the intros, doing the outros, in the outros, you want to try to introduce the next episode that's going to come out, all of those types of things. People don't realize how much it takes to actually put into that. And it literally becomes a job that you have
Yeah.
to work on and focus on.
Hmm.
Um, but you're definitely, I think you're finding your groove, Noah, for sure, because uh, it seems, from my perspective, that it's right where you want to be. It allows you to have your show. And at a certain point, I venture I'll probably see you on TV or Amazon or Netflix or somewhere where, podcasts are showing up or where talk shows are at. Um, I can see that for you. I can see you having that because you are a good conversationalist. Um, and as many times as people said to you when you were a kid, I can hear something, but I really can't see where that sound is coming from. The fact that they were hearing something does say something about who you are. Even though they didn't want to recognize you, they were still hearing you and they were acknowledging that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that flipped perspective for little Noah that was running around, not getting a whole lot of attention from other people when you were trying to engage. Um, you didn't recognize it then, but they had no choice but to acknowledge that they could hear you. And now you're doing exactly that. You're putting your voice out there, you're sharing from your perspective, and people are hearing you still.
Yeah, it's just weird how, podcasting was not on my radar of what I
Yeah,
wanted to do.
mine either.
Um, it just ended up being like that. And I had a lot of people that had doubts about the podcast being successful. They said, you'll get successful, the podcast will be successful. I just don't think they expected it to be this successful this quick. they
Right.
It just blew up like in a month or two after I started like on Podmatch. Podmatch really helped
Oh, yeah.
catapult it to where it is now.
Yeah.
Before that, it was doing pretty well with the listens and everything. People were listening to it, but
Hmm.
I just didn't get that kind of attention and pull until
Yeah.
I joined them. And everyone on Podmatch has been so supportive, and that's been the really good thing. There's a lot of good support systems on there, and a
Yeah.
lot of good friendships on there. I've made
Yeah.
some really good connections through Podmatch on there, and hopefully in the coming years, I can go to one of these podcasting events where I can start finally meeting some of these guests that I've had on the show and have had numerous conversations with
Yeah.
uh, on the digital side, and the in-person side would be really, really good to be able to do.
For sure. For sure. I'm sure it's going to happen. I'm sure that eventually you get to the place where it's just all synced up the way it's supposed to be for you. Um, One of the last things that I wanted to discuss just a little bit more, because this is part of your story and it's also part of my story. You said that you had a bit of depression that was going on last year. Um, was when that creeped in for you, were you able to recognize whether or not it was because of something that was taking place around you, or if it was just your physiology that was changing and delving into that type of process?
At that point, I knew what was causing it at that point.
Gotcha.
It was pretty simple to kind of pinpoint it and be able to stop it before it got worse.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just weird because I've been doing so well, and it was just a multitude of stress of job hunting and everything. Once everything kind of worked out, I've been doing good ever since. But now I can really pinpoint now when a depression spell is happening and what's causing it. Because of how
Okay.
many times I've had depression spells and anxiety spells, I can tell you exactly what's causing it.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. I get it. That's great. I'm glad you're able to recognize the triggers, the different things that are affecting it, so that you can take care of yourself and get through it a lot easier. Because it's difficult when you don't know where it's coming from, why it's happening. But again, I just want to highlight your resilience, your courage, um, because that's what it takes to get through all of that type of stuff. And we don't recognize that within ourselves. So hopefully you can hear that, and you can realize it for yourself as well, because I see it. And somebody who's been through it, I can recognize it pretty quickly. So I just wanted to end with that for you, is that you are that mental health warrior, and you're doing the good work that I'm trying to do as well because of our journeys. One of the things that I always want to remind the audience each one of these episodes is something that you've done for most of your career, and that is because you wanted to have your own show, you've kind of kept that in mind and kept that going, and now you have that, and that reminder for the audience is to always listen to your heart, but also be kind to your mind.